What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and this time I'm going to be covering RoboCop 3, the end to the original trilogy of RoboCop films, and this movie sucks. Yeah, I ain't going to sugarcoat it. RoboCop 3, there are parts of the movie that I like, but for the most part, this movie is... watching it again really gave me... I have a lot of issues with it. Now, when RoboCop 3 first came out, I was actually 3 years old. So this is one of the early movies I remember watching as a child, and I loved it. I used to love RoboCop 3, used to watch it all the time. But, you know, as you get older, your thoughts and opinions change because you mature more, and your views mature. And you start to actually, you read certain things you read about behind-the-scenes things for a lot of movies. And when you actually watch the movie, knowing what you know back then, you see just how badly it affected, the movie you're watching. And RoboCop 3 is one of those movies where Peter Weller's not back. John Robert Burke takes his place, and he does a serviceable job, but he doesn't have that commanding, authoritarian presence that Peter Weller does. And he's okay as RoboCop, but it's completely different. Like, the chemistry with a lot of the other characters don't work. Like, for me, Burke's chemistry with Lewis, unless you're one of those people that can carry over the developing partnership from the first two movies and apply to this for a different actor, that's all good. But to me, what made the relationship work was because Weller and Nancy Allen has such great chemistry with one another. And the chemistry with Burke and Allen, to me, it's just not there. They hardly share any dialogue or screen time together. It's really going based off history, and that's a major flaw, especially when you see what happens to Lewis, which really, really, really aggravated me. Lewis, who I think is a really good female character. Loved her in RoboCop 1, loved her in RoboCop 2. Her performance in RoboCop 3 is fine, but she gets killed off. And she gets killed off at the midway point of the movie. And I'm sorry. She got killed off in the first half of the movie, and pretty much her death. And the only person who seemed to care about her death is RoboCop, because no one cared that Lois was killed in the line of duty. Sergeant Reed didn't mention anything. I like Sergeant Reed, played by Robert DeCoy. He's one of my favorite characters as well in the RoboCop movies, and he actually gets a little bit more screen time, and to me, Reed has one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie where, pretty much OCP has got this rehab team, and they're trying to clear out a section of Detroit called Cadillac Heights, because that's the land they want to use to build Delta City. So they're evicting people from their homes. They're taking them out by force. It's pretty much like the Nazis. It's like a dictatorship, fascist movement going on, forcing people out of their homes, and rendering them homeless for profitable gain. So they have this team called the Rehabs, led by a guy called John Daggett, played by John Castle. I think his name is John Castle. Really, really bland, forgettable villain who does not have the staying power or charisma of a Dick Jones or a Clarence Boddicker, and he does not have that mystique like Kane does from Part 2. He's just there, and he's a bad villain. And anyway, so yeah, they take over Cadillac. They want to take over Cadillac Heights so they can rebuild Delta City, and you have this resistance group that's trying to fight them off. And of course, the resistance group is led by CCH Pounder, who plays a character called Bertha. So yeah, and they're trying to fight off the rehabs, and the cops are caught in the middle, and it pretty much comes down to the point where the cops are being told by OCP to become hired mercenaries, hired guns. And Reed has this great line where he says, "We're cops. We don't do things like that." And I love how he just looks Johnson right in the eye and pretty much takes his badge, throws it to the ground, because he'd rather give up the badge than to be a paid mercenary and force people out of their homes. And the scene has a good payoff when Reed and the other cops who left the precinct came back, because They refuse to work for OCP, but they're not going to give up the blue. They're not going to give up being cops. They're Detroit police officers, not OCP police officers. So they join the side of the resistance, and they help fight off this group called the Spider Punks, who were introduced early into the film. So that whole subplot with Reed, I actually really like. I actually really like it a lot. I do like it a lot. I think that, to me, that's one of the stronger points of the movie is Reed, pretty much wrestling with the whole being an OCP cop or a Detroit cop, and him standing firmly as being a Detroit cop. That whole stuff was good. That's one of the best parts of the movie for me. But yeah, Ann Lewis's death is never questioned by Reed, and it sucks because Ann Lewis is a good character, and the only person who cares is RoboCop. And the way they kill her off is just so anticlimactic. It wasn't even a good death. It was like, oh, blink and you miss it, she's dead. Really annoyed me because Ann was such a good character. Such a good character. Of course, we kill off Ann so that we can give the bulk of her screen time to a child and called Nico, and she serves no purpose, really. I mean, you could have easily taken the kid out and just have the doctor who is, on RoboCop's side, give the doctor some of those traits you gave Nico as being a computer hacker and shit like that, instead of wasting my time with the kid actor who served no purpose to the overall story and is just there because this movie is for kids. Yes, this movie's big problem is PG-13, aimed for a younger audience, and that was the first mistake. RoboCop has always been a dark, gritty, satirical series of movies. The first one is dark, gritty, and brutal. The second one, not as dark as the first one, but it does have some grittiness to it, and it is a violent movie. RoboCop 3, not even a violent movie. It's just so childish, it's so corny, it's so cheesy. RoboCop has really bad one-liners. The villains are just so bland. And that's pretty much it. I don't really have a whole lot of good to say about this thing. There are some lines that I did chuckle at. The whole Reed's whole subplot I do like a lot. But other than that, this movie is really forgettable. After you watch it, probably not going to remember it. And that's really all I got to say. I don't have nothing else to say, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, there's just like this whole thing with this Japanese company taking over OCP. You don't care. There's this guy called Coons who betrays the resistance to OCP, and you don't really care because this movie is just stuff happening, and there's nothing really anything interesting holding it together. It's really just a mess of a movie, and that's all I got to say. That's really all I got to say. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give RoboCop 3. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's a 4 out of 10. The acting is fine. The acting's still fine. John, Burke does an okay job at taking over the role as Peter Weller, though you can clearly tell that it's a different actor, and it just doesn't feel the same. But I'm not gonna lie, I did cheer out loud whenever RoboCop was on screen. Just seeing RoboCop be a badass is always fun. Some of the action scenes in this movie are just, they're just watered down. Watered down. The story is just comically stupid. Nothing interesting at all. It tries to be dark, but the movie itself is not presented as being dark. It still has a lighthearted tone to it, which really ruins it. If anything, the only scene in this movie that was legitimately dark was this scene where the cops are being barraged by the spider punks at like the 15-minute mark of the movie, at the beginning of the movie. That's the only time this movie came close to being somewhat dark with its tone. But even that became cheesy once the spider punks start talking, and they're saying the patented Frank Miller dialogue. Yes, Frank Miller co-wrote this movie with Fred Decker, and you can clearly tell this is a Frank Miller movie. The dialogue is just ridiculous. Nonsensical rubbish. So yeah, 4 out of 10. If you have not seen RoboCop 3 in a long time, you're not missing anything. To me, I just don't care about RoboCop 3. I really don't. I wanted to give it another chance, and knowing the things that I legitimately enjoyed and knowing it has things that I just don't really like, to me, it does not feel like a RoboCop movie, and that's sad. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll check you back next time for more. Thank you, goodbye.